A K-9 German Shepherd was drowning in a frozen lake. Look who came to help. A hero on four paws was fighting for his life, trapped in a frozen lake. His legs trembled, his strength fading fast. The icy water clung to his fur, pulling him down, while the brutal cold cut through his body like knives. Time was running out. The ice was cracking beneath him. Piece by piece, his handler stood on the shore, screaming his name, desperate but helpless. He couldn't reach him. The freezing water was swallowing the K-9 whole. Then something happened, something no one expected. Who could possibly save him? Before we continue, make sure to subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and hit that like button. Your support helps us bring more inspiring and emotional stories like this one. The sharp winter wind howled through the leafless trees, carrying tiny flakes of snow that danced under the pale morning sun. Officer Jake Carter tightened his grip on the leash as Rex, his loyal K-9 partner, sniffed the air with sharp focus. They were on patrol near Blackwood Lake, a vast frozen expanse that stretched across the park. The ice was thick, but Jake knew better than to trust it completely. Rex had been trained for countless situations, tracking fugitives, detecting explosives, and protecting his handler at all costs. But nothing could have prepared them for what was about to happen. A sudden movement, a blur of brown and black fur. Before Jake could react, Rex bolted. His instincts took over as he raced toward the frozen lake, barking furiously. Jake's pulse spiked. "Rex, stop." But the dog didn't hesitate. His body tensed as he leaped forward toward something. Jake's eyes locked onto a figure at the edge of the ice, a small, frightened deer struggling to stand. The thin ice beneath its hooves creaked ominously, already beginning to crack. Then it happened. Rex lunged forward just as the deer skidded backward. The ice, fragile under the sudden weight, shattered beneath them. A sickening crack echoed through the air. Jake's heart stopped. Rex, the K-9, hit the freezing water instantly, his powerful body disappearing into the dark abyss below. Splashes erupted as he fought to stay afloat, his claws scraping against the jagged edges of the ice. The deer, panicked and thrashing, struggled to escape, but Rex was sinking fast. Jake ran, his boots pounding against the snow-covered ground as he sprinted toward the lake. His breath came in short bursts, his heart hammering against his ribs. He dropped to his knees at the edge, reaching out with desperate hands. "Rex, hold on, buddy, I'm coming." The K-9's dark eyes locked onto his, wide with fear but full of trust. He paddled furiously, but the ice-cold water drained his strength. His thick coat became heavy, dragging him down. Jake scanned the area frantically. He couldn't jump in. The water was too deep, too deadly. If he broke through the ice, they would both drown. Think. He grabbed his radio, his hands shaking. "Officer down. I need assistance at Blackwood Lake. K-9 in the water. Ice is breaking fast." Static, a crackle, then a response. "Hold tight, Carter. Help is on the way." But there was no time. Rex's head dipped beneath the surface for a brief second before he struggled back up, gasping, coughing, whining. Jake's chest tightened. He couldn't just stand there. He dropped onto his stomach, inching forward across the ice. His breath turned into white mist as he reached out, stretching his arm toward Rex. "Come on, boy, you got this." Rex kicked with everything he had left. His paws clawed at the ice, trying to pull himself up, but every time he did, the brittle edges crumbled away beneath him. Jake felt the ice shift under his weight. A dangerous groan rumbled beneath him. Cracks spiderwebbed across the surface. He didn't care. He had to get his dog out. "Just a little more. Buddy, reach for me." Rex gave a final push. His claws found the edge again, and this time Jake lunged forward, wrapping his hands around the dog's harness. "Got you." He pulled. Rex kicked. The ice groaned louder, threatening to give way completely. Then a snap. Jake felt the ice beneath his body splinter apart. His stomach plunged as the surface disappeared beneath him. He was falling cold, unforgiving. The shock of the icy water stole his breath instantly, paralyzing his muscles. The world above became a blur of white and blue as the lake swallowed him whole. Everything went silent, and then Rex barked. Not a whimper, Not a cry, a commanding, defiant bark. The K9 wasn't done fighting. Jake felt something. Rex's powerful jaws closing around the strap of his jacket. And then he was being pulled. But by who or what? The freezing water punched the air out of Jake's lungs. His body seized up instantly, muscles locking as the unbearable cold wrapped around him like chains. The lake swallowed him whole, dragging him down beneath the ice, the weight of his uniform pulling him deeper. Somewhere above, muffled by the water, Rex was barking. Jake kicked, his limbs heavy and numb. He forced himself upward, desperate for the surface, but the cold was ruthless. It sank into his bones, turning his movement sluggish. His lungs burned. No, he couldn't die here, not while Rex was still fighting. With a final, desperate push, Jake broke through the surface, gasping for air. Ice-cold water streamed down his face as he struggled to stay afloat, his fingers clawing at the jagged edges of the ice. Rex was there, paddling furiously just a few feet away, his eyes locked onto Jake. His fur, soaked and heavy, clung to his muscular frame as he barked again, a sound both commanding and desperate. Jake knew that bark. It meant don't give up. But he was drowning. The ice around him was too fragile to climb onto, and his strength was fading fast. Each second in the water felt like an eternity. His vision blurred. His breath came in short, ragged gasps. Somewhere in the distance, sirens howled. Backup was coming, but it wouldn't be fast enough. Jake's head slipped under again. Darkness crept at the edges of his vision. Then a splash. A shadow moved above him, then hit the water with force. Something was coming toward him. Jake's brain, fogged by the cold, barely processed what was happening. But then teeth, strong jaws, locked onto his jacket and pulled. Rex? No, it wasn't Rex. Through his blurred vision, he saw a massive figure, another dog, a German shepherd, but not Rex. The dog was larger, older, its fur darker. A retired canine? Jake's heart stuttered. Where had it come from? But there was no time for questions. The mystery dog wasn't hesitating. With a powerful grip, it pulled Jake toward the ice, using all its strength to keep him afloat. Rex paddled closer, barking frantically. And suddenly, there were hands, human hands. Jake barely registered the figure crouched on the ice, reaching for him. "Hold on, officer," a voice shouted. Jake tried to focus. A man, middle-aged, rugged, wearing a heavy winter coat, was kneeling at the edge of the ice, gripping a thick rope tied to the massive German shepherd harness. Who was he? Jake couldn't think. The cold was taking over. But they didn't stop pulling, neither did Rex. The ice groaned and cracked. But the man braced himself, pulling Jake forward while the unknown K9 dragged with all its might. And then Jake felt solid ground beneath him. The man yanked hard, rolling Jake onto the frozen shore just as the ice behind him gave way completely. Rex collapsed beside him, panting, shaking violently. The other dog, the stranger, the hero, stood protectively over them, its deep brown eyes locked onto Jake. "You're all right, son." The man's voice was firm but calm. He pulled off his coat, draping it over Jake's soaked body. "You almost didn't make it." Jake shivered violently, his breath coming in short gasps. He turned his head, his teeth chattering, and looked at the man and the dog. "Ooh." His voice barely came out. The man gave a small, knowing smile. He placed a gloved hand on the large German shepherd's head. "This is Titan," he said. "He's been waiting for a moment like this." Jake's heart slammed against his ribs. Titan, a name he had heard before. His mind spun as his vision faded at the edges. Who was this dog, and why did it feel like he had saved Jake for a reason? Jake coughed violently, his body convulsing as the freezing water drained from his lungs. His skin burned from the brutal cold, and his hands shook uncontrollably as he tried to push himself upright. His vision blurred, his head spun, but one thing remained clear: Titan. The massive German shepherd stood just a few feet away, his eyes locked onto Jake's with an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine, one that had nothing to do with the cold. Who was this dog? Jake forced himself to focus on the man beside Titan. He looked rugged mid-50s, with graying hair and a presence that spoke of experience. His coat was thick, dusted with snow, and his boots were worn from years of use. "Here," the man said, tossing another dry jacket over Jake's shoulders. His voice was steady, but there was something in his tone, something that felt almost personal. Jake shivered violently, his teeth chattering so hard it hurt. "Who are you?" he asked. The man exhaled, crouching beside him. "Alan Carter." He paused. "I'm your father." Jake froze. His father? His pulse stuttered, his brain struggling to process the words. He hadn't seen his father in 20 years, not since he walked out on him and his mother. Before Jake could react, before he could even breathe, Alan gestured toward Titan. "And this," Alan said, his eyes flickering toward the dog, "this is the only reason you're still breathing." Jake swallowed hard, his mind still reeling. He turned his gaze to Titan. The dog didn't move, standing like a statue in the snow, his deep brown eyes never wavering. There was something about him, something Jake couldn't explain, a presence, a connection he had no reason to feel. Yet it was there. "You trained him," Jake murmured, barely able to form the words. Alan nodded slowly. "Titan was mine, back when I was still with the department." Jake's stomach twisted. He had heard that name before. Titan. Years ago, when he was just starting out as a rookie, he had come across old case files. His father's name was in them, Alan Carter, former K-9 unit officer, a legend. But Titan's name was there too, a dog that disappeared without a trace. People said he died. Jake muttered, "People said he died." Alan's jaw tightened, his fingers curling into fists at his sides. They were wrong. Jake fought to sit up, ignoring the ache in his body. "What happened?" For the first time, Alan hesitated. His eyes darkened and tightened, as if sensing something heavy in the air, let out a low, quiet whine. Jake had seen that expression before. Guilt. Alan finally spoke. "Titan was my partner, the best damn K-9 I ever worked with. We were assigned to a high-risk operation, tracking a cartel safe house. Things went south. Bad. I got shot." Jake's breath caught in his throat. Alan continued, his voice rough, like he had buried the story deep for years. "Titan saved me, dragged me out of there, fought off 2 guys on his own. I would have died if it weren't for him." He exhaled slowly, looking down at the dog. "But when the team arrived, they said he had disappeared. No body, no tracks, nothing." Jake frowned. "So how did you—" Alan let out a small, humorless chuckle. "I didn't find him. He found me." Silence. Jake looked at Titan again. The dog held his stare, unwavering. Something wasn't normal about this. Titan had been presumed dead, but he was standing right here, years later, in perfect condition, as if time had barely touched him. "You think I'm crazy," Alan said suddenly, watching Jake's expression. Jake shook his head. "No," he admitted, "I just don't understand." Alan exhaled, running a hand through his damp hair. "Neither do I, kid. But here's what I know. Titan's no ordinary dog. He disappeared when I should have died. And now, he just pulled you out of the same lake that almost killed me 20 years ago." Jake's blood ran cold. 20 years? He looked at Titan again, a chill creeping up his spine that had nothing to do with the ice. The dog was staring at him, watching him like he knew something Jake didn't, like he had been waiting for this moment all along. Jake sat in the snow, his body still trembling from the cold, but his mind burned with something else entirely. Questions. Titan, the dog who shouldn't be alive, stood beside Alan, watching him with an eerie stillness. His dark eyes carried something Jake couldn't name, something that felt knowing. Jake had spent years in the K-9 unit. He had seen brave dogs, smart dogs, dogs who defied the odds, but none like this. None who had disappeared without a trace and come back decades later. Jake swallowed hard, shifting his gaze to Alan. "So what? You just woke up one day and Titan was sitting on your porch." Alan didn't laugh, didn't even smile. "It wasn't like that," he said, his voice low. "I was living in upstate New York, off the grid, after I left the force. One night, in the middle of a snowstorm, I heard scratching at my door." Jake felt his heartbeat slow. "It was him," Alan continued. "Same markings, same eyes, but different." He hesitated, running a gloved hand over Titan's thick fur. No scars, no signs of aging. It was like the 10 years since I last saw him had never happened. Jake's breath hitched. No, that wasn't possible. Dogs age fast. A decade was an eternity for a working K9. And yet, Titan looked the same. Jake forced himself to think rationally. There had to be an explanation. Maybe he was stolen, Jake suggested, shaking his head. Taken by someone after that mission went bad, and I don't know, kept him somewhere. Alan's gaze darkened. I thought that too. He paused. So I ran tests. Jake frowned. Tests? Alan nodded. Blood work, x-rays, DNA scans. I called in every favor I had left in department. The results came back, and his voice faltered. Jake leaned forward, heart pounding. And what? Alan exhaled, eyes flickering toward Titan, as if still struggling to believe what he was about to say. They said Titan's biological age is 5 years old. Silence. Jake stared at his father, waiting for the punchline. It never came. 5? That was impossible. By all logic, Titan should be a frail, old soul by now. But instead, he stood before them, strong, alert, untouched by time. Jake shook his head, shoving a hand through his damp hair. That doesn't make sense. Alan let out a humorless laugh. You think I don't know that? I've spent 10 years trying to figure it out. But here's the part that'll really screw with your head. He crouched beside Titan, placing a firm hand on the dog's back. Every winter, around this time of year, he disappears. Just vanishes for exactly one night. Then he comes back, just like nothing happened. Jake's stomach twisted. What are you saying? His voice was barely a whisper. Alan's face was unreadable. I'm saying I don't think Titan ever really left. A gust of wind tore through the trees, rattling the frozen branches overhead. The lake behind them sat still. The jagged hole in the ice a chilling reminder of how close Jake had come to death. And yet he was alive. Because of Titan. Jake looked at the dog again. Those eyes, dark, intelligent, ancient. Titan blinked slowly, then did something that sent a shiver down Jake's spine. He stepped forward and pressed his forehead against Jake's chest. Jake's breath caught. It wasn't just affection. It wasn't just relief. It felt like something deeper, something intentional, like Titan had been waiting for this moment, waiting for him. Jake's hands hesitated before coming to rest on Titan's fur. His heart pounded in his chest, but something inside him settled, as if a piece of a puzzle he didn't know he was missing had just clicked into place. Alan watched in silence before finally speaking. I don't know why he came back for me, he admitted, and I sure as hell don't know why he just saved you. His gaze hardened. But I do know one thing. That dog isn't normal. Jake swallowed hard. He knew it too. Titan wasn't just a K9. He was something else, something Jake couldn't explain. And for the first time in his life, he wasn't sure he wanted to know the answer. Jake couldn't sleep. Even after warming up, after Rex curled up beside him and Alan stoked the fire in the small cabin where they had taken shelter, his mind refused to rest. Titan, the dog who shouldn't exist, the dog who had pulled him from the ice, whose record said he should be dead, but whose body looked as if time had ignored him. Jake sat up, rubbing his face. The embers in the fireplace cast an eerie glow across the room. Alan was asleep in a chair, his head tilted back, snoring lightly. Rex was sprawled on a rug, breathing deep, his legs twitching as if chasing something in his dreams. But Titan was awake, sitting perfectly still in the shadows, watching Jake with those hauntingly intelligent eyes. Jake's pulse quickened. He'd worked with dozens of K9s before. He understood their body language, their instincts, their silent communication. But Titan was different. Not just smart, aware. Jake exhaled slowly, pushing off a blanket and standing. The wooden floor was cold under his feet as he padded toward the window, staring out the frozen lake in the distance. The hole in the ice had begun to freeze over, as if it had never been broken. Just like Titan. He turned back. The dog hadn't moved. Jake hesitated before walking over, crouching down. "What are you?" he murmured. Titan didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just watched. Jake reached out, running his fingers through the thick fur along Titan's neck. His coat was warm, steady, his heartbeat strong beneath his ribs. Completely normal. But nothing about him felt normal. Alan's words echoed in his head. Every winter, around this time of year, he disappears. Then he comes back, just like nothing happened. Jake's stomach twisted. What was he missing? He glanced at Alan, still asleep in the chair. His father had spent years trying to figure out what happened to Titan, but he had never found answers. Jake wasn't as patient. He grabbed his phone from the table, unlocking it. The screen cast a dim glow over the room as he typed into the search bar, Titan K9 disappearance 2012. Articles popped up, old police reports, mentions of Alan Carter, the disgraced former officer who had left the force after being wounded in the line of duty. And there it was, Titan, presumed dead after a failed cartel raid. No body recovered. Jake frowned, scrolling further. His father had been telling the truth. The search teams had never found the dog. But there was something else, something buried in the files that made his blood run cold, a witness statement. Jake clicked on it, eyes narrowing as he read. I saw it with my own eyes. The dog should have been dead. We all saw him go down. But when we got there were no tracks, no blood, just gone. Jake swallowed hard, his pulse pounding in his ears as he scrolled further. Then something else, a security cam image, blurry but visible. A figure in the distance, a dog, Titan, 10 years ago, looking exactly the same as he did now. Jake's hands trembled. He exhaled sharply, setting the phone down, staring at Titan. You died, didn't you? Jake whispered. Titan blinked slowly. For the first time since pulling Jake from the ice, he moved. Not much, just a tilt of the head, a subtle shift of weight. But it felt like an answer. Jake's blood ran cold. Titan wasn't just a survivor. Titan wasn't just a miracle. Titan was something else entirely, something Jake wasn't ready to understand. And whatever the truth was, it wasn't finished yet. The room felt colder than before, not from the fire dying down, not from the snowstorm outside, but from the weight of realization pressing down on Jake's chest. Titan wasn't normal. Jake had spent his entire career working with K9S, understanding their instincts, their loyalty, their unwavering bravery. He had seen dogs put their lives on the line, take bullets for their handlers, survive impossible situations. But none of them had ever done this. None had vanished for a decade and returned untouched by time. None had escaped death. Jake swallowed hard, his fingers hovering over his phone. The security cam image of Titan from 10 years ago still glowed on the screen. The date in the corner, 2012, mocking him. Titan looked exactly the same. Same marking, same fur, same knowing stare. Jake clenched his jaw. No, there had to be a rational explanation. A mistake in the records, a case of mistaken identity. But deep down, he knew that wasn't true. Titan's dark eyes flicked toward him. The dog's posture steady, relaxed, but expectant, like he was waiting for Jake to accept what was right in front of him. Jake let out a shaky breath. His father was still asleep. Rex curled up beside him. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, rattling against the cabin walls. Slowly, Jake stood, his legs stiff, his muscles still aching from the icy lake. He walked to the door, needing air, space, anything to clear his thoughts. Titan followed. Jake stepped outside, his boots crunching in the snow. The lake stretched before him, dark and quiet, like it was hiding a secret beneath the frozen surface. Titan stopped beside him. The dog didn't shiver, didn't react to the cold. Jake took a breath, watching it turn to mist in the frigid air. Tell me, he murmured. Titan tilted his head. Jake let out a bitter laugh. You're not on talk, are you? Titan huffed softly, his ears flicking forward. Jake stared at him, then at the lake. His mind raced, piecing together the things Alan had said. The way Titan disappeared and reappeared every year. The way he hadn't aged. The way he had pulled Jake out of that ice like he had known exactly what would happen. Jake exhaled sharply, shaking his head. You're impossible. Titan blinked. Jake ran a hand through his damp hair, then looked back at the cabin. Does my dad know the truth? Titan didn't react. Jake turned back to the lake, his pulse still unsteady. You saved him, didn't you? Just like you saved me. The dog was silent. Jake's fingers curled into fists. His practical mind was screaming at him to dismiss this, to find some logical excuse. But his instincts, the same instincts that had kept him alive as a cop, told him to listen. Titan was real, but Titan shouldn't be here. Jake's breath hitched. A thought struck him, one so wild, so impossible, that he almost didn't allow himself to believe it. He turned back to Titan, voice hoarse. "Are you trapped?" Titan didn't move, didn't blink. Then, for the first time, he looked away. Jake felt a chill race down his spine, not from the cold, but from the answer that silence gave him. Titan was trapped. In time. The realization hit Jake like a punch to the gut. That's why he never aged. That's why he disappeared and returned. That's why he had been waiting for Jake to fall into the ice. He had been reliving this moment over and over again. Jake staggered back, his heart pounding. "No," he whispered. "That's not possible." Titan finally looked at him again. This time, there was something in his eyes Jake hadn't seen before. Sadness. Jake's chest tightened. If that was true, if Titan was caught in some endless cycle of life and death, returning only to save them, then what happened when his purpose was fulfilled? Would he disappear forever? Jake's throat tightened. No, he wouldn't let that happen. He crouched, gripping Titan's fur with shaking hands. "We're going to figure this out," he murmured. "You hear me? You saved me, and I swear I'll save you." Titan let out a low, soft whine. Then, without warning, he stepped back. Jake frowned. "Titan?" The dog's ears flicked, his posture tense. His eyes darted toward the trees. Jake followed his gaze, his stomach dropping. A shadow moved in the forest. Something was out there. Rex let out a sharp bark from inside the cabin. Alan stirred, waking with a start. Jake stood slowly, his instincts screaming. They weren't alone. Something else had been watching, and now it was coming for them. Jake's breath hitched as his gaze locked onto the tree line. Something moved between the trunks. Just a flicker of motion, a shifting shadow against the snow. Too big to be a fox. Too quiet to be a deer. Titan stood rigid, his ears perked, muscles coiled like a spring. Whatever was out there, he knew it. Jake's got twisted, his body screaming danger. Rex let out a low, rumbling growl from inside the cabin, his usual friendly demeanor gone. Then Alan's voice cut through the tension. "Jake!" Jake turned his head slightly, keeping his eyes on the forest. "Dad, wake up. Something's out there." Alan pushed himself up from the chair, his old cop instincts flaring to life. He didn't ask questions. He just grabbed his flashlight, stepped to the door, and flipped the safety off his sidearm. The wind howled through the trees, whipping snow across the frozen lake. The air felt wrong. Jake's heart pounded as he took a slow step forward. "Titan," he whispered. "What is it?" Titan's response was immediate. He let out a deep, guttural growl, one Jake had never heard from AK-9 before. It wasn't a warning. It wasn't aggression. It was recognition. The shadows moved again. Jake's grip tightened on the doorframe. Then a voice, low, faint, almost carried away by the wind. "Come back." Jake's blood ran cold. His eyes darted to Alan, whose face had gone pale. He had heard it too. The wind roared again, cutting through the silence, and Jake swore he saw figures, multiple, just beyond the first line of trees. Alan lifted his gun. "Who's out there?" His voice was strong, steady, the voice of an officer who had faced things far less strange than this. No answer. Jake took a deep breath, his pulse hammering. He turned to Titan, who still hadn't moved. "Do you know them?" Titan whined, the sound low, strained, like he was torn between two forces. Jake's throat tightened. "Who are they?" The wind died suddenly, leaving only silence. Then a whisper. "He doesn't belong to you." Jake froze. Alan's grip on his gun tightened. "Show yourselves." A heartbeat. Two. Then the shadows vanished, gone like they had never been there at all. Jake let out a shaky breath, his skin cold and damp. "Did you hear that?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Alan nodded once, his jaw clenched, his face unreadable. Jake turned back to Titan. The dog's ears were still pinned back, his stance tense, but there was something else in his eyes now, something close to fear. Jake had never seen AK-9 look scared. He took a step forward and crouched down, gripping Titan's fur. "Who were they?" he whispered. Titan exhaled heavily through his nose. He didn't whine, didn't whimper. He just looked at Jake. And for the first time, Jake understood. Titan had never just disappeared. He had been taken. And now they wanted him back. Jake's chest tightened. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know what Titan really was. But he knew one thing. Titan had saved him. And no matter what came next, he would return the favor. Jake stood tall. "You're not taking him," he said to the empty forest. The wind whispered through the trees, carrying the sound of something unseen retreating. For now, Titan pressed against Jake's leg, solid, warm, real. Jake let out a slow breath and looked down at the dog. Whatever had been waiting in the woods, it wasn't over. But Titan was still here. And as long as he was, Jake wasn't backing down. The end. For now.